Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of the Murder Part. Tonight we'll be looking at the case of Candy Montgomery. We'll get started with introductions. Jeff?
Hi, my name is Jeff Pincin. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the states of Delaware and Pennsylvania, and I specialize in the treatment of OCD and other anxiety disorders. And if you stick around at the end, we'll respond to comments and questions. Please leave a comment or question. We may respond in future episodes. And if I hadn't become a counselor, what I really wanted to do was be a civil law attorney, but specifically one that practices civil law, but also takes on capital murder cases, like just out of nowhere. Like even though I had never done one before, take on a capital murder case. That's really what I wanted to do. But not many people want that. They want you to have experience. Go figure.
Plus, you only get to do that once, right?
Right. It's really a terrible business model. Wouldn't have worked out. I figured it out real quick.
Because after that first capital murder trial, like you have experience with it.
Right. And then people might actually want to hire me, and it would be a big mess. Right. So counseling, I had to go with this. This counseling is my last choice. Right.
Broken dream.
Really was.
Tough break. Mike?
My name is Mike Smith, also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Delaware. I specialize in narrative therapy and geek therapy, self-styled expert in all things geek, and I'm working on specializing in the treatment of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If I hadn't become a counselor, what I actually really wanted to do when I was like 16-ish was be like an amateur volleyball referee.
There you go.
Not like a coach or anything, but the ref, like sitting on the sidelines giving the calls. The only problem was I didn't know anything about volleyball.
Oh.
And,
is that necessary?
And it was, well, kind of, to be a referee. When, it kind of, at 16, it was just an excuse to try and watch the girls in the local area. But I didn't know anything about volleyball, so it went by the wayside, and I ended up as a counselor.
You were tossing that dream back and forth? Is that what you're saying?
I was. Okay. I was trying to get a spike on it. I set that one up really nicely.
There you go. Good one.
It just went back and forth.
All right. So Candy Montgomery, as I understand it, these days she goes by Candace Wheeler, which was her name when she was born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She has very poor reviews online.
I saw
and a lot of bad reviews.
Yeah, I'm not one to talk about reviews for counselors. If somebody goes to a counselor and they're helped by that person, 9 times out of 10 they're not going to leave a review.
Right.
It's the ones who have bad experiences that don't. Right. And I look at on some of those same websites, my name pops up. I've got 0 stars.
Yeah.
I also have no reviews.
Right.
So. But Candy she's like 1 star or half a star or something like that.
Something along those lines.
And she's 10 reviews that are all negative.
Yeah. I didn't see any actual reviews.
Yeah, I wasn't able to read the reviews, but there were 10 of them were 1 star.
I'm going to guess that most of those people probably didn't see her as a therapist. They're probably just like, we think she's guilty, so here's a negative comment, negative review or something.
Yeah. That's likely. But it's surprising. Her broken dreams landed her as a counselor.
She ended up as a... I couldn't find a lot of great sources for her current life. I know they said she moved to Georgia, and we'll get to the story, but she divorced her husband, and after they moved to Georgia, I think 4 years after the trial was over, and became a mental health professional, a therapist. There's different, but I don't know if it was a counselor brand therapist.
Oh, it's LPC.
Is it LPC?
Yeah. She's got a license number, everything.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a licensed professional counselor, mental health.
All right. Yeah,
there you go.
She's in the ranks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. What are you going to do, right? I mean. So this story is interesting because it has a lot of good data sources, a fantastic two-part series in Texas Monthly,
right?
Yeah,
which is one of my favorites to begin with. It has a book that I read for this, and I think the 2 series that are coming out, I think one's already out.
Hulu.
They're
definitely
both based on the book. Yeah. And when you read the book, there's a lot of overlap with Texas Monthly.
I think I saw it at the bottom of the Texas Monthly, second part of it, that it was either the book was a source or it was based on the book or excerpts from the book or something along those lines.
There's a substantial overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I skipped whole sections of the book because they were the same thing as well. Right. Yeah, so I was like, I'm not going to read it twice. But yeah, I mean, the book was book was good. I didn't watch the series on Hulu. I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be like, it's not a documentary.
No, it's a dramatization. But, they do admit that some things have been changed for dramatic tension.
Right.
But they didn't change a lot of the real details of what happened. I thought it was really good and really well acted. I watched the whole thing. Also, a couple of news articles that I read on online, all of the information they had came from the Texas Monthly article. They cite that article like 5 times.
Yeah. I noticed that. I was trying to get an update because the Texas Monthly stops long before the whole deal was over. And I was looking through updates. I'm like, they all cited Texas Monthly. We've talked about Texas Monthly before.
Right.
They don't do a lot of true crime, but when they do, excellent.
Yeah.
And it's all in Texas.
That's the bad part, right? Is that you don't get much variety with Texas Monthly. You only get
you get a lot of variety, but it's all Texas.
Texas brand variety.
It's all Texas brand variety. I mean, Texas is huge, so there's a huge variety.
Yeah, it's almost like you're rooting when you see a crime comp. You're rooting for it to be in Texas. Hoping they'll cover it, right?
It's going to be in Texas. Texas Monthly will cover it.
You're going to have a good source if it's coming from Texas Monthly. Yeah, you're right.
What's interesting about Texas, a complete aside, is that they have more schools than anywhere else in the country. So most textbook companies actually tailored their textbooks to Texas. So, states like Delaware have to buy the same textbooks that they're aiming to sell in Texas.
It's interesting.
Yeah, Texas is an interesting place. Long time ago, I used to live there, San Antonio. But there's a lot of variety. Right? You can drive all day and still be in Texas. You start in Texas, drive all day, still there. It's a big place, as you're saying. Like it's tough to understand, having spent so much time like in the East. Like you forget, like we can drive for a few minutes to be in Pennsylvania, then New Jersey,
right.
and New York.
From here, 15 minutes, I can be in Maryland, Pennsylvania, or New Jersey. Takes a little bit longer to get to Virginia, but if I drive all day, I'm 2 states away.
Yeah, I mean, I've driven before straight through to Florida in one day from here. It's just East is much different than Texas. It's a lot of land there.
Yeah.
And, a lot of different cultural influences. So one part of the state might be different than others. This case takes place near Dallas. In the Dream Home area, I guess, according to, I guess Texas Monthly, this was Candy's dream house.
Right.
At least in the 1970s it was.
Right.
In Wiley, Texas.
So Candy Wheeler, the story starts, she was married to a man named Pat Montgomery in the early 1970s. He was an electrical engineer at Texas Instruments. And I remember back in high school, back in 1986, I think it was, freshman year in high school, the algebra class, they had us buy a Texas Instruments calculator. Like, you didn't have to, but they strongly recommended it. I forget the model, but it was one of the popular models at the time, like a scientific calculator.
Right.
Really could do everything. And it was solar powered, and that was brand new.
Whoa. Wow. Fancy.
Like, if you came in with the solar powered one, that was like, what? It's powered from light? That doesn't even make any sense.
People like asking you for money at that point. Like, hey, you spot me a few dollars here?
That is so much money.
Can you jump your car with that calculator? It's not that much power. You could take your finger and put it on the sensor, and you would get far enough, and it would start to dim.
Yep.
So anyway, I found that calculator not that long ago. Within the last year, works perfectly.
Yeah.
Good quality.
My scientific calculator that I had, the TI-85 when I was in high school, like it's gone. I used that. I put games on that thing. I could run programs in games.
Wow.
Like it was, like they were really pixel games, but we're talking Pong level graphics, but you could do it.
But if it was between math class and games,
oh yeah,
I mean, yeah, you know what you're going to choose there.
I mean, any math teacher who sees you playing a game on your scientific calculator has got to give you props for the programming that it takes to get it on there.
That's true. Got to be some credit given there.
Yeah, just saying. I don't remember how to do those programs, but at this point, but
I think my version just had a like a screen for digits. Like there was no graphing function or anything.
It was a huge screen graphing calculator. And like, now my watch has more calculating power than that thing ever did.
I mean, these days, I think almost any device you have has more computing power than like the Apollo missions, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah. Like literally my smartwatch has more processing and computing power than the computers that were on the Apollo missions. And most of the calculations for those missions were actually going over by hand too.
Slide rule. Yep.
By one person.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. So Candy and Pat, they moved to their dream house, northeast of Texas, 1977, and they had a son and a daughter. Now, Pat made $70,000 a year. It's an incredible amount of money for 1977.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's a livable salary right now.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
I think it's a pretty good salary.
Yeah. It's a decent salary. It's more than I make, but it's a decent salary in 1979.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was real money.
Yeah.
That was real money back then. And and Candy became bored. So, the Texas Monthly, the affair is part one, and the murders or the killing,
Right.
is part two. Although I think it was a murder, we'll get to that. But officially, a killing. And you think when you first start reading, you're like, wow, that's a lot of words for just to cover the affair.
Yeah.
Like that's a kind of a weird place to divide a criminal case.
Right.
But then when you start to get through it, you're like, wow, they really did have a lot of detail about the affair, and it's hysterical.
Yeah.
It's just,
Wow.
Like how much?
I just did the inflation calculator. Yeah, the $70,000 in 1978 translates to $310,000.
Wow.
Into 2022.
real money.
That's some real money.
They're doing good.
A little bit less than a couple of years later in 1980 would have been 250,000.
So they would have qualified eventually as wealthy.
Yeah.
By the standards of that day. Now to be wealthy, I think in 2022, your net worth has to be something like 2.2 million. But back then, I'm sure it was much lower. To be probably less than $1 million. To be considered wealthy, probably far less.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess everybody, this is what I gather, everybody went to a Methodist church in the story. And they had all kinds of activities. Seems like a very active, not just the spiritual component, but the extracurricular activities. She took that maybe a little too literally in her activities, but there's like volleyball, which, there you go.
That would have been great.
At the
That would have
Methodist
been a place.
Church.
That would have been a place right there.
It really would have. Yeah. In a wealthy community.
I was really not existing in 1978, so it really been hard for me to be a volleyball referee then.
Just sounds like an excuse.
Okay, fine. I'll go make time travel happen and go back and live out my
You got
dream.
the DeLorean, right?
Maybe
It's a little bit small to get into.
the spiritual component was not there as much, because I didn't really hear much about the spiritual component. I heard
I
a
assume
lot.
it must have had one because it was a church.
I assume that too, but I hear a lot more about the extracurriculars and the volleyball and the affairs and the in the Hulu special they use the word smut, like the
Smut.
romance novels or whatever else. I hear a lot more about that than any kind of spiritual component. So I don't know if it was really there or
Well,
not.
it was the community. It was a community gathering place
Right.
for that area. I mean, Candy was a stay-at-home mom because when her husband bringing home the equivalent today of $300,000 a year, she didn't have to work and she didn't want to work, and her kids were school age, so they were off. So she had a lot of time on her hands.
Right.
So those extracurriculars were trying to keep her busy. She was trying to keep busy with doing those things. So she was in the choir and organizing different things for other people and playing on the volleyball team, trying to do all sorts of different things. Teaching classes, like amateur classes.
Yeah, I probably, I don't know what Northwest Dallas was like in 77, but I'm guessing that she was pretty consistent with the cultural norms.
Yeah.
Of that area. Wealthy area, relatively, and a lot of people kind of members of the church there, of that particular church. So they met a couple named Alan and Betty Gore. When they were there, and they all hung out and spent time together pretty frequently. Alan, he's an interesting character.
Yeah.
The way he's described, especially in part one of the article. I mean, to hear Betty describe him, it's like a young Burt Reynolds.
Mustache included.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at his actual behavior, I don't know what she was.
Right.
I don't know what she was perceiving.
Right. Right.
Or what she was saying. I know what she was perceiving, something different than what she was saying. But yeah, he's kind of analytical, but she thought of him as personable, outgoing, and with a great sense of humor. Maybe. One thing in the book they talk about that isn't touched on in Texas Monthly that I thought was interesting was that Betty, or they touch on a little bit with Betty, she had maybe some somatic issues, like psychosomatic symptoms. And Alan was the one who was kind of outgoing.
Right.
But in their early relationship, the roles were reversed. There was no somatic part, but Alan was kind of reserved and Betty was outgoing. And something kind of changed and flipped around. And she became, it almost sounds like hypochondriasis, like she was really worried about physical symptoms.
I wonder if it was the kids just having kids that did it. It seemed to be the time when that kind of switched. Maybe it was just being at home. Well, she was a teacher, but maybe it was just...
She had been a teacher for a
Right.
while. I was a middle school teacher.
Right.
But she ended up losing that job because of disciplinary actions she was taking against the kids. Like, she gave her entire class detention because one kid
Multiple
did something and she didn't know who it was.
Yeah.
Like, one kid had snuck something and she's like, I don't know who it is. So everybody gets detention. And the principal's like, you can't do that. You can't punish everybody for the offense of one. You just can't do it.
It almost seemed, just in the depiction of the Hulu series, it seemed more like physical manifestations of depression. Like she was feeling depressed and kind of feeling physical symptoms from that. Or she didn't know how to express the depression to other people, so it kind of came off as complaining about not feeling well or not feeling motivated or like she really wants to do anything, coupled with having kids and being at home and Alan being away often for work. It seems like maybe all those things together really created an environment that was not conducive to her feeling very good in general.
Yeah, it seemed like Alan wasn't completely happy in that relationship because of all the problems, high maintenance, right? She was high maintenance from his perspective. That's what it sounds like. But then in other times he seemed kind of committed, and we'll talk about the evolution of the affair. But it was a very unusual path to infidelity. So Alan spent a lot of time with Candy and other women at church, but more with her, like kind of hung out with her. Sometimes he would wink at her.
They met at the volleyball games. Like he was playing, she was playing. And, they started talking then.
Yeah, and it was friendly, but I guess Candy was seeing more than was really there.
Right.
And she couldn't determine whether he felt the same way or if he was just being friendly. So it was kind of, she was in a weird place with it, although they were both married. So it seems like maybe the affair wouldn't have been a good idea because it would be an affair. But that didn't really seem, Candy didn't really seem to have the moral concerns that Alan had.
Yeah.
As she was contemplating it.
Seems like she was more just okay with it and didn't really, I don't remember reading. I mean, she probably didn't tell anyone if she did, but didn't seem to have any kind of issue with it at any point. The only problem that I remember reading or hearing about was the sex was not good enough, or she wasn't even happy with that. The emotional connection with Alan, and just not wanting another husband, essentially.
Which is what she ended up essentially getting, right? Like that's the to me that's the funniest part of this whole thing. We'll get there, but that's like you could see it coming, but okay.
Yeah, but she apparently she and Pat or Montgomery were not not being as intimate as much as she wanted them to be.
Right. And there was no fireworks.
Yeah.
She specifically told a friend that she wanted fireworks. So I was thinking about, like, what are the similarities between, like, how did fireworks get connected with sex? I mean, I guess both occur in the dark, primarily.
There's lots of loud noises.
There's lots of scary, loud, booming noises. They
People
last,
enjoy both of them.
They last not long, right? Both tend to fade quickly. I was thinking, like, the burning smell. Like, what? I don't know.
I don't know. I've never had the burning smell.
Might be a limited audience for that one that appreciate the burning smell.
Well, there's always that, like, sulfur or whatever. When you're
With the fireworks.
right,
Oh, okay. We understand.
Gotcha.
a cloud of smoke. I don't know. But fireworks is a term that a lot of people use when they're looking for better sex. Like, they want the fireworks.
At this point, every time I hear fireworks, like somebody say fireworks, I just go to a Simpsons episode in my head where Homer was trying to do the fireworks for the thing, and he's talking to this old fireworks guy. And they're like, I'm thinking, boom, boom, pop, 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 boom, 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 pop, pop. They have a conversation back and forth in boom, boom, pop, pop, boom, 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 pop. It's hilarious because Simpsons, it is hilarious.
Yeah, great show. Fireworks can also, there's an element of risk if you don't know what you're doing.
That's true.
You can blow off a limb or whatever. I guess.
Not sure how risky that is. Any other activity?
Yeah, probably not as much. I'm just trying to think of the parallels, like how people.
There could be, Lorena Bobbitt had an issue with that particular.
with parts being separated from the.
Well, John Wayne Bobbitt had that issue, but
In that case, it was dangerous. But
yes, it was.
I don't think there's.
But I don't think
many
it's a
others.
general, like as a general rule, I don't think that's as big an issue.
It's not something people generally panic about going into. Yeah, like. Will there be an explosion that takes off a limb or other body part? Yeah, so that's what she was looking for either way. A lot of excitement, and she really was looking for somebody like Burt Reynolds, like his characters in the movie, right? Somebody thought I was attractive, masculine, fast cars. Instead, she ended up with Alan.
Well, apparently he was kind of like Burt Reynolds.
At least to her.
That's what she was saying.
Well, he had a mustache, so
He was halfway there. He's halfway to Burt Reynolds.
big, thick mustache.
Well, I automatically think of the Burt Reynolds in the SNL Celebrity Jeopardy skits, and so maybe Alan's more like that Burt Reynolds, just kind of does his own thing, oblivious to a lot of other things. Maybe it's more like that Burt Reynolds.
Was it Norm Macdonald that played?
Yeah.
Did such a great job with that. Yeah. Could be. Yeah, it could be that. And that would have been, Norm Macdonald came along, I think, after this. But yeah, she still could have, seen him, seen Burt Reynolds or any number of other characters from the late 70s that inspired her. But so on one occasion, I thought this was interesting too. I guess Alan and Candy tried to make a play on the same volleyball. He was coming over and she got close to him and he had a sexy smell. And that's what really just got in her head. She couldn't shake that.
It was the smell of gunpowder. Like that was the smell that he
Something just exploded.
I doubt it. Something just exploded. I doubt it was the smell of gunpowder on him. Although, like, some people like the smell of corda in the morning.
I mean, she wanted the fireworks, and if that's what she thinks is sexy, the smell of gunpowder. Maybe that's
maybe he just came back from the range.
Maybe he did. I don't know. Oh, in 1977 or 1978, it would have been just his backyard.
In Texas, right? In Texas, whatever you feel like it. Not so much anymore, but yeah, definitely then.
That's my parents' house down in North Carolina. It is the backyard, as the range. Like, you literally can just walk off the porch and start shooting.
Mm-hmm. It's convenient.
It is.
Yeah.
But the smell is can be really important to some people, not just women, but men too. The smell can be very attractive for somebody. And I think that Candy was she was bored. She was like really bored from the things that I read. She had that classic what they call type A personality, like the driven, always to do things, to be doing things, to be busy, and she just had nothing to do. Like she did all the things and had all the things juggled and handled and just was like, I still have time. What do I do with my time? I want something, exciting. She was a thrill seeker. She wanted some thrills. And instead of, insisting on going out and getting a motorcycle or something, she, tried to play volleyball. And that wasn't exciting enough for her. Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's try an affair. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, well, that's what she thought. Yep. She thought it would be more exciting than volleyball. Based on her descriptions, I'm not sure if it was, but we'll get to that. It was something else to do, right?
Yeah.
So Alan initially, there's this whole breakdown, right, where she kind of sneaks into his vehicle when he's in the parking lot after, I think it was a choir practice, and they have this kind of, she has this direct delivery, which apparently was her style, right? Did not.
She was very direct.
Yeah, it didn't surprise him, that part. Essentially, throw in the attraction equation into the mix.
Yeah.
And he says no. After a while,
so, I'm attracted to you. You're attracted to me. Let's have an affair. Mm-hmm. Just bluntly out there, like, let's do this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He didn't. He was interested, but not enough to jeopardize his marriage. A lot of it seemed to be based on compassion for his wife. Mm-hmm. Although he did say, I guess, in terms of the sex with his wife, he thought of it as routine. This isn't a quote, but routine, unimaginative, and mechanical. Mm-hmm. Kind of what I gathered from various places there. Right. So it didn't sound too great, but it takes two people. So that wasn't necessarily Betty's fault.
Right, that's true.
But Alan really couldn't get Candy out of his mind. Mm-hmm. The idea just kind of sat there and grew for a while, and then he approaches her again. On her 29th birthday, he calls her. And that was about 2 or 3 weeks later. And he's like, can we go to lunch and talk about what we talked about before? Captain Subtlety there.
Yeah, that thing we talked about before.
Remember the thing? It was kind of like a, topic I can't talk to about
you got in my car and then we talked. That thing we talked about? Can we go talk about that again?
You want to talk about the volleyball?
I'm trying to be subtle here. So the crows fly at midnight. No, it's not a spy thing.
Choir practice? What is it? What is it we're talking about?
Just tell me.
Yeah, she knew.
Yeah. So they had this long discussion, which did not sound romantic in any way. And they concluded the risks were exceptional.
They did a pros and cons list. Like it's not a romantic. It's not a romantic conversation. It's not like, I really like you. It's, hey, here's the pros of this. Here's the cons of this.
Yeah, he was a hair's breadth away from that scientific calculator. Right? But yeah, they need to weigh the risk to make an informed decision. Because that's how affairs are decided upon, in an informed way.
Right. I mean, everything should be decided on in an informed way. But, generally affairs aren't decided that way.
They're not characterized by that.
Yeah, not usually.
Yeah. It kind of makes it worse, though, that they were like, let's really give this one some thought. I mean, it's the kind of thing somebody says where they're like, I want to do this, but let me just convince myself a little bit more. Let me have you convince me a little bit more, which is terrible.
It's like emotionally I'm on board, but logically I'm not buying it yet. Let's go. Let's do some spreadsheets and work it out.
Let's put a chart up on the wall. Let's really figure this one out.
Throw a chart up there and figure this out.
Yeah, you ever see those movies where there's like a mathematician and he's got like 20 chalkboards full of like notation,
right?
Algebraic notation. Each chalkboard has to have a reason for this affair. Pros list, cons list.
And if it were modern day, it'd be one of those clear ones, like there's like a dry erase board, but it's clear, and the camera like sees through the other side, and they're like, scratching their chin, and like
you just hear the squeakiness of the sharp thing.
Right. Somebody else is in the room, like trying to follow their math, and that's what it would be if it were a modern affair.
Yeah.
He was trying to solve
a modern affair would just be swipe left, swipe right.
That's true.
That's right. Yeah, he was trying to solve an unsolvable equation that people have been trying to decipher for millions of years. Right? How to have an affair with no risk and apparently no fun. Right? So, had kind of both sides of it covered. So Candy was getting frustrated with Alan, right? And I think this is actually pretty insightful. She's thinking about this, and she's like, if this guy is so tentative about getting involved, then he's not aggressive enough to make the fireworks. So she was kind of thinking about just, no, this is not.
They came up with rules for the affair.
Right. They met again. Yeah, they met again near the end of November 1978. And they had put together a more formal structure. I think they need an attorney. They need an attorney in there and sign some papers.
Right.
Rule number 1 should have been don't talk about the affair. Rule number 2 is we don't talk about the affair. But their rule number 1 was that they would meet at the motel once every other week. They would split the cost, cash only. Right? They would split the cost of the hotel and of the meal. Right. Candy would make a meal and bring it with, and they'd eat at the motel before they engaged, and then Alan would pay for the meal
because it was his lunch break.
Right.
So that was how they solved that problem. He was sneaking away from at lunch.
And then there was the last rule: no feelings.
No emotional entanglement. Which is. It's like, so you just picture this affair as like a murder victim, right? They're just like, how many bullets can we pump into this thing?
It's like the fireworks. The fireworks are getting damper and damper every single time.
It's a sparkler. Light this.
It's like, here, light the sparkler. I know it's wet, but I can light it anyway. I just got a Bic lighter. This is my fireworks.
And they have like flint and steel at that point, like trying to light this thing.
Apparently, it ended up with them rubbing 2 sticks together.
That's pretty much the speed of it.
In Candy, the Hulu one, they said no phone, like no calling each other at their homes or something. I don't know if that was actually a rule or if that was just something they had in the film. I don't remember seeing it. In the Texas Monthly, the rules specifically, but I'm sure it was in there. But either way, I think they broke that rule, if it was one, pretty frequently.
I think originally it was it was weekdays only, and even though later there's a series of Fridays, they initially said Tuesday or Thursday.
Right.
They alternate, I guess, or something like that. Every 2 weeks.
Those were the days that Candy said. Those were the days that her kids were going to be somewhere, and it was easier for her to get out of the house or something like that.
Yeah. So at this point, even with all this negotiation, Alan still says no. Right?
He's a tough one.
Yeah,
it's hard to get there.
And a few days later, he calls her and says, let's move forward. After she said, we'll always wonder if we don't do it.
Yeah.
That's what stayed with him.
Adding some intrigue in there.
It's like, I think like the rules and logistics were like they were trying to be logical about it and reasonable about it, and that they could work. Apparently, it did work for a long time to keep the affair secret. Like nobody was suspicious. Apparently, but just and I think Alan was like he was trying to be good. Like, we're talking about this. It's just an idea, but I love my wife. But then when he's with his wife, it's just like the only thing he's thinking about.
Right. Well, that's the problem. You really get the sense that he just had like thoughts of Candy bouncing around in his head the whole time. Calling her, let's talk about all that stuff. Like he was keeping it alive. Mm-hmm. And I think she was probably closer at that point to saying, you're just not exciting enough.
Yeah.
So December 12th, 1978, after they agreed to the rules and initialed them and had them notarized or whatever, it was their first sexual encounter. And they describe it in Texas Monthly. It's like they're both having second thoughts as they're approaching that. Because I guess Candy went ahead in the motel, and then Alan drove in. They talked for a while. Nobody wanted to make the first move. So eventually somebody must have. I don't know if they said who, but somebody did. And then they finally...
Very likely Candy.
Almost has to be, right?
As much as Alan was waffling back and forth, Candy was probably the aggressor in that situation. She probably got tired of waiting. It's like, okay, fine, come on.
Yeah, got things to do here. Yeah.
I got to get back to the kids. Come on, we're gonna do this.
Yeah. So when they finally had sex that first time, it didn't last long.
Yeah. The lunch was more enjoyable.
Yeah, Alan was very happy with the experience, though, and according to what we see here, it's we see that Candy was satisfied with it, even until I think the fourth time. Like it was 3 or 4 times, she was just it wasn't doing anything for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think what she was more satisfied with was the titillation of it being this illicit thing. And by the time they got to like the fourth or fifth time, it was just like it was now routine.
Yeah, it was work.
It was now work, and it was just.
It was no longer the big scandal that she had.
No, because nobody knew about it. They'd done a good job of hiding it in 1978. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it was 2022, it'd be all over Instagram. Like somebody would have caught one of the two of them going into the motel, and it would have been over.
Yeah, yeah. They did. They got away with it, and they talked a lot. One time, they even skipped the sex and just talked. Mm-hmm. But Candy got tired of making the food because she had to get up early to prepare this meal, and it was just a hassle. It's just this is kind of like this should have been the important realization for her. You just added a second husband.
And clearly what they were going there for was not worth doing everything she had to do.
No, apparently, again, I think that most of the time the meal was better than the encounter.
In the Hulu one, Ellen drives, I believe it's a Volkswagen Rabbit. It's one of those small Volkswagen trucks. Bright yellow. I think it had ladder racks on it, if I remember correctly. It was an odd thing, right? I mean, it was an odd truck to begin with, but let alone, I think it had ladder racks on it, which is weird. Like, small truck, here's this guy who's, this analytical type guy, doesn't really fit, but maybe in a weird way it does fit, that none of those things go together in reality. But then there's Alan, and it's like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. And so that was kind of like, that took it from here to here for me. Like, just that truck and just how bright and in your face it was. It just really completed the story for me.
Right. And like initially I think like a bright yellow truck, like that's going to stand out. He's going to go to a motel for an illicit affair in a bright yellow truck. And then you remember, that was 1978. That wasn't unusual. Like everything was bright pattern colors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There was a lot more creativity with colors back then. Now cars are gray. Well, you get a few shades of gray, black, white, every now and then like a dark red or a dark blue.
Right.
It's pretty much it. All the creativity's gone. Some sports cars, you still see.
Right. The sports cars where you find the colors.
Yeah,
especially
yellow,
the
green.
The brighter reds and things. And, the higher the trim level on the sports car, the bigger range of colors you get.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, 70s were a lot better for that, though, in so many ways. Although the cars broke down frequently, so.
Yes.
You take what you can get.
Much more frequently.
Yeah. And there was a gas crisis around this time, too. I don't think that was mentioned anywhere, but 79,
the current gas price crisis puts that to shame, though.
Well, there was lines back then. You couldn't, you literally couldn't get it.
Oh yeah, there were in some places like there were lottos essentially where like you could only, if the last number of your license plate was odd, you could only fill up on like Mondays and Wednesdays. If it was even, you could only have Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like there were real rules behind being able to put gas in your car.
How expensive was it? I mean, relative to what gas would have been normally. I assume that it was more expensive given the scarcity of it.
Prior to that, gas was like 5 cents a gallon or something like that.
In the late
or
70s,
10
in the late 70s, I think it was a little higher in the late 70s. But yeah, it probably only went by a few cents, but that was a big difference.
Sure.
50s and 60s, it would have been 5 cents. So it might have been like 25 cents at the beginning of the decade.
That's what I'm thinking, somewhere in there, yeah.
Like 25 cents by the beginning of the decade, and then like 90 cents by the end of the decade.
Nowhere near $12, whatever it is now.
Nowhere near the like every time I go to a gas station these days, like I walk away from it feeling mugged.
That's true.
Like, just once, I want to see somebody standing at the pump wearing a tuxedo who's going to hold out the thing like a sommelier. Just like, it's like, would you like the premium, sir? No, the unleaded, please. Like, very good, sir. Like, 'cause, I mean, that's how much money I'm spending on.
I'm not going to indulge today. No, thank you.
That's how much money I'm spending on filling up my car. Jeez.
It does make a good argument for electric. We've talked about that before. Yeah. How, in a sense, they're impractical at the range, but now with these prices,
Yeah,
I think they're pretty practical for most people, even with the range.
The difficulty I have, though, is that the price of most of the electric cars is almost prohibitive.
right? It's the cost of getting into the game, right? It's just
I mean, yeah. Once you have the Tesla, like, you're good. But the Tesla for the same luxury level as you would get in a gasoline engine, you're paying almost twice as much, and like that makes it prohibitive.
Yeah.
Man.
But
you can go for a used one, which is the suggestion. Go for a used one.
Well, there's cheaper ones now. So, I mean, you don't have to go with the Tesla, of course, but thankfully there's a lot more options, becoming more so as well.
Well, every model year that comes, we see more and more electric. Eventually, I think most vehicles will be electric. It's just right now, I think it's just tough with the charging times and how many places you can go to charge.
Right.
That's where people struggle. But if you only have to drive, say, 20 miles or even 40, 50 miles to work and then back, electric's the way to go.
Yeah.
It makes all the sense in the world.
If most of your running is local, and you're not traveling more than a few 10 miles a day, you can make a charge last a month. And then when you're going home every day, just
Yeah.
I'm really excited about one electric car, and that's in 2024. Dodge is supposed to be releasing their new e-muscle car, like the full electric muscle car by Dodge. And I'm like, it's from what I understand, it's supposed to look a lot like the Challenger, which I love the Challenger and I own one and I really like it. But my car will be paid off then.
Makes it tough.
And I'm like, if cross my fingers that it's not prohibitively expensive, I could use my car as a trade-in on the electric one. That'd be awesome.
That would be. Yeah. They've come out with like teaser images of it.
Yeah.
Lately, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It has kind of like the Challenger silhouette.
Yes. Right. Okay.
Like I'm like, I like the look of it. It's only a couple of years away.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great.
And I'll have my car paid off in a couple of years. So timing is right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know somebody who owns is it Tesla Plaid S?
Model S Plaid.
S Plaid, is that what it is?
I think it's Model S Plaid.
Model S Plaid.
I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Expensive car. And it, got to see it. I mean, it looks fantastic. A lot like from the back, a lot like a Porsche 911.
Right.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Porsches are all right, but it's 0 to 60 and like realistically like 2.26 or something. So to put that in perspective, a Nissan GTR, which I think is an incredible, technological wonder, is like 2.7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, the world's fastest car, the Bugatti Chiron, is like 2.3. Like,
so yeah, and you're talking about
I think talking about
Tesla's $130,000 car against a $2 million car.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. All the torque's available right away. So it's the electric. It's not an engineering, marvel in that sense. It's the electric that does it, but it's a handy advantage. And the center of gravity is pretty low too, with the batteries. Yeah.
I mean, there's still something to be said for the old gas-powered engines. And as far as it goes, I mean, there was a guy a few months ago, I was just driving home one day, and there was a guy in a Tesla who just, like, every time he got stopped, like, he would wait and just accelerate as fast as he could, because the Tesla, even the sedans, they're pretty
fast,
quick, because electric, all the torques are available right away, so he's taking off, and I'm just like, okay. I'm obeying the laws of the road. Finally I end up like at a light and he's right next to me.
Oh boy.
Like, as much as he was accelerating and everything, I still ended up at the light right next to him.
It's usually how it goes in suburban areas. Like you really can't go far. You're going to get to another light.
Yeah. And the thing that irritated me was the license plate. The license plate said GASSLOL. Gas lol. I'm like, all right, sport mode. light went red, went green, I took off, left him behind. Like my 6-cylinder Challenger was still faster than his Tesla off the line. And the only reason I slowed down was because I had a turn coming up that I was leaving the road. But like he was taking forever to catch up to me. And if I just kept it down to the floor, I'd have dusted him, just left him completely behind. So there's still something to be said about the engineering of modern gas engine vehicles. Yeah. It's just that the gas prices are insane.
Yeah, and I don't really know if that's going to...
For no reason.
They're going to go up or down. I mean, it's not been good so far.
Right.
It was supposed to go down, and it went down a little bit, and then it shot back up. Mm-hmm. And like, there's no reason for it.
Yeah, makes things tough. It certainly, anybody thinking about making electric vehicles, that volatility.
Right.
And the stock market, like, I don't know what's going on there, but that's that. But yeah, there's been a lot of ups and downs. Mm-hmm. Speaking of ups and downs, how's that for a segue?
It's like a segue back into the affair, ups and downs. The affair itself had ups and downs. There was some excitement and some non-excitement. We weren't referring to anything else other than that.
Absolutely, yeah, just the affair itself, and but yeah. So I think this is interesting, right? So Candy got tired of the sex. Apparently, just wasn't satisfying anymore. She was tired of the cooking. She was also tired of the special things like giving him notes and cookies. How did they get to notes and cookies?
Like, I see. That's the thing. Part of the whole like no feelings, right. Like no emotional attachments. When you're giving notes and cookies, like that's emotional attachment right there. Like, that's how you build emotional attachment. That's how relationships, build and grow. And
those little things. Yeah.
Those little things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just funny that was what she was sick of.
I'm sick of all these little things, these feelings. But yeah, eventually she told him that she was starting to get feelings.
Yeah, so they go back and forth with that, and there's a break because Betty had a child,
right?
So he took a break from the affair. What a great guy, right?
Husband of the year. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, Betty was a winner too because she made friends with Betty during that time period. She's having an affair with him, and she's making best friends with his wife. Yeah. And like when she had her baby, Candy threw the baby shower at her house.
Yeah, getting very intertwined. But then I think, and this might be a key issue for what happens in the future. It's debatable, but there's one occasion where I guess they went to Kansas to visit family members. And they came back, and as I understand, it was like a Thursday, and Alan didn't take off work Friday because that was the day, right?
I want to see Candy.
So he was like, gonna get to work. Betty's like, well, what's the deal with the work? Mm-hmm. So he calls from, I guess, his own kitchen, which is where phones would have been back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And only there, pretty much.
And if you had a little bit more money, you might have had one somewhere else, too.
Might have, yeah. So people could pick up and listen in on you. A mild clicking sound might occur. That was it. But he canceled with Candy over the phone by using code, essentially. And she wasn't happy.
Yeah.
Not at all. And I wonder if that kind of stayed in her mind.
Sure.
Yeah, it might have.
Yeah, they were back and forth, off and on, and yeah, when I was growing up, telemarketers would call, and we'd have phones in different rooms and stuff, and so my dad would pick it up in one room, and he loved messing with the telemarketers because he would just say things like, had somebody call selling windows. He's like, well, actually, kind of doing something illegal here. We really don't want any windows. We don't want anyone to see. So we're listening in on the other phone, and we just we had to hold the over the microphone, and we were just losing. Like we just couldn't. But he would do this so often, and he loved it. Of course, we loved it too. Me and my siblings would just sit there on the other phone. So then, of course, cell phones more popular and kind of lost that, and that was upsetting. And that was the only thing that was upsetting about cell phones, that we couldn't listen in on those kind of conversations. But that was a highlight of my childhood. So if they ever brought landlines back for some reason, that's something that everyone should start doing. Just figure out some fun to have on the phone.
I had a friend of mine who excelled at those kinds of those kinds of messing with telemarketers. It was one he he got on the phone with the telemarketer who was selling like magazines or something. And he's keeping him on the phone as he goes over into the kitchen, and he grabs, like, opens the cabinets and grabs out some pots and pans. He just waits. He's like, okay, yeah, all right. Well, hold on, let me get my credit card. And he starts banging the pots and pans together, and he yanks the cord out of the bottom of his phone. Just make a huge clatter, and then yanks the thing out. And then just plugs it back in, hangs it up. The telemarketer called back to make sure he was okay.
That's perfect.
Oh, it was so funny. Like,
That's perfect.
it's great.
Times have definitely changed.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you remember the rotary dial phones?
I do.
I wasn't there for that. I've seen them.
remember.
For sure.
I do remember the rotary dial phone. We had one in my house for a while.
The zero took the longest.
Yeah.
Right, so if you had a phone number, had a lot of zeros, and you messed up, hang up,
Start
start over.
Well, the other thing you do is just dial the zero and wait for the operator and say, "Can you dial this number for me?"
For a fee, they would.
1-800-100-0003. Too many zeros.
Yeah, it took forever. I think it was Pulse, right? They call that Pulse because tone was the big technology that came later, where you could press the buttons.
I was actually really impressed with the phone in the Hulu show Candy.
Yeah.
The one in the Montgomery's home had a retractable cord.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like it was just a box on the kitchen counter. She pulled it out and the cord comes up and she talks and then she puts it down. And the cord just retracts into the box. I'm like, 1970s technology.
I mean,
Like everyone else had just a spiral cord. And if you've had one of those spiral cords, if you've walked too far away from the thing and then come back, it's never going to be the same again. It's just going to twist up and not up, and it's terrible.
Well, and if you turn the phone,
right.
rotate the phone, over a series of months, the cord would tighten.
Right.
It's like,
And then one loop just goes inside out, and it's like it never goes back the way it was ever. Like even if you work the kinks out, it's going to go back that way. It was terrible.
yeah.
It's awful. That was great. I was so thankful when we got the cordless phones.
Yeah. I remember the very first cordless phones, like inside the house, like and you'd hear other things especially in the early days, like they weren't real exclusive with the signals.
Right.
Yeah, especially if you had a really long antenna.
So you'd be talking and you'd hear your neighbor talk, like, what are you doing on my phone? But it was never clear. It was always like they were in the distance, they couldn't hear you. Like, hang up or do something different because
Gosh.
or whatever. Yeah.
Go in the other room. Communications technology of the early 80s. But the Montgomerys and the Gores definitely had their phones, and apparently the affair kind of petered out at one point.
Yeah, well, we see that the 2 weeks after he canceled, they went and had sex again. And that evening, Alan went back to his house, and Betty wanted to have sex. Apparently, this is the first time ever that she asked, or wanted to, I don't know, but that she initiated.
Right.
And, I guess one of those situations you can light the fuse, but there's no more powder to go back to the fireworks. So
There you go.
he was in a bad situation.
There's a refractory period that men go through, and at a certain point, it gets longer and longer.
Yeah, as you get older. So Betty was pretty mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She puts herself out there and then nothing. And yeah, one of the terrible byproducts of having an affair is that you're messing up your marriage real bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a byproduct. It's kind of the biggest consequences of the affair.
Right.
So then there's a lot of discussion about this marriage repair workshop, right? Marriage encounters, how they call it.
Right.
Marriage encounters, yeah.
And they get all this detail. Probably don't need that much, but it was interesting to see different ideas, what they do. But
Before we get to that, I wanted to mention like one of the great scenes in the Hulu show, just kind of to highlight where how boring it kind of got, was like it comes into Candy in the motel room. She's standing at the sink washing the dishes, and then it kind of pans around, and there's like Alan right behind her with his pants down, and then like he finishes and walks into the bathroom, and she just and it goes back to washing the dishes. I'm like, that just shows like how routine it had gotten at that
Right.
point, and just how bored she was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like they're there and just doing the thing that they came to do, and that's it. And then we're moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it just lost all the spark. And eventually Candy actually ended the relationship, technically, but Alan was kind of hemming and hawing.
Yeah.
You know, and she's like, nope, that's it. So that's because he went to a marriage repair workshop
Right.
and had a great time.
Right.
Yeah.
Which Candy and Pat ended up going to later on as well, but didn't have. It really wasn't as transformative, transformational for them. Just didn't really repair much, I don't think.
Well, I think Betty was a lot more open and honest than
Yeah,
Candy was.
that's true.
And while Alan wasn't quite as open and honest during that workshop, the honesty that Betty brought into it ended up like making Alan realize that he really wanted to make this marriage work and stay. Like that it was much more important for him than he thought it was.
Yeah.
And Candy's experience with it was just she kept everything back and was like, "There's nothing wrong with our marriage."
Just like she had done so many years before that.
Yeah. Yeah. So at that time with the workshops, Alan and Betty were pretty happy, although Betty still didn't know that she shouldn't have been happy, I guess. And Candy and Pat.
I don't remember in the Texas Monthly that's coming up, but in the Hulu show they talked about how at the marriage workshop Betty actually said that she'd had an affair earlier on in their marriage,
Right.
and like Alan, like he forgave her for that and was like, and I mean it's the gracious thing to do when you've had an affair and your partner says I had an affair. It's kind of like, okay, I can't get mad. So I'm going to forgive, and I'm kind of guilty, so I'm going to stop doing this to move on.
So everybody was in a adequate place. So this takes us to June 13, 1980. The Empire Strikes Back was in the movie theaters.
Yeah.
And Candy had, I think it's pronounced Elisa. Is that how they pronounce it in the show? The daughter?
They use different names in
Oh,
the
okay.
show.
Okay.
So
Yeah, for the kids.
yeah, so I was saying Alyssa, Elisa, yeah.
Yeah. So so Betty and Alan's kid, Elisa, was with Candy and her kids to go see The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
And apparently they'd gotten to the point, like they're family friends, and like that happened a lot. Like the kids stayed over a lot, and Betty'd had her other child at that point.
Yeah, everything was good.
So I mean, that would have been a welcome relief. Is like take one of our kids.
Yeah,
It's
true. Yeah, the kids' names were Christina was the older one, and Bethany was the baby in the show. Or no, I'm sorry, it was no, Bethany was actually, I forget what it was in the show now.
I don't recall.
Yeah, I'll think of it. But Christina but yeah, they use different names for the kids.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were kids at the time. And
Valerie, that's what it was, Valerie.
Yeah. So there was a baby in Betty's house in a crib. And then the daughter, Elisa, however you pronounce it, was with Candy. And I guess the daughter stayed and Candy stopped by the house. Alan was gone to work and then he went directly to St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, he had a work work trip that he had to go to, and Betty was none too happy about the work trip.
Yeah.
Like she'd been telling him for a couple of days that she didn't want him to go. And she was afraid that of something happening. Like she didn't want him to go, and she even called his supervisor to ask the supervisor to tell him not to go.
She had a problem, just had a baby and you're asking him to go on this trip, and it's understandable. I could understand that from her perspective or anybody's perspective. Like, no, I want you to be here with your family, which had a baby, and that makes sense. But yeah, calling his supervisor, I'm sure he wasn't happy about that because it probably made him look pretty bad at work. But I understand it from her perspective, though.
So Candy wanted to pick up I guess it was like a bathing suit.
Bathing suit. Yeah, all the kids had swim practice, and the the Gores child, Alyssa hadn't been meant to stay over that night. She was supposed to go back to back home, but they decided to keep her over another night, and which was fine with everybody. But that meant that they were going to swim practice. It was because of the movie, because of Star Wars, because they were going to go see Star Wars. She wanted to stay so she could go with the family to see Star Wars. But they were going to go to swim practice the next day, and she didn't bring her bathing suit. So Candy called Betty, said, "Hey, I need to stop by, pick up bathing suit and get over so they can do swim practice."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was this should have been a non-lethal encounter. I think people typically pick up bathing suits and survive.
Usually,
I mean, I can say that every time I've picked up a bathing suit, I have survived, and just about everybody I've encountered has survived too.
Yeah,
I think it's 100%. I'm pretty confident that 100% of the people that I've encountered while getting a bathing suit have survived.
Lucky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but comparatively, right? I mean,
Right.
it could go a lot worse than surviving.
Right.
So something happened, and we'll never know what.
Right.
But we do know that Betty got struck with an axe at a 3-foot wooden handle 41 times. 40 when her heart was beating. One post-mortem. In as I understand, a utility room had linoleum on the floor. Candy sustained an injury, so it was those two were the only two in the house except for the baby in the crib.
Right.
And she had her toe badly sliced.
Nobody suspects the baby.
That's right. Yeah, no one ever brings up that theory.
Nope.
Ever.
Nobody thought about it. The detectives didn't even pursue it.
Mm-mm. No questions, no interview.
Nope.
No polygraph for the baby.
And Candy didn't even try to implicate her.
Yeah, which is surprising.
That is very surprising. Yeah. The baby had blood on her, so she must have done it.
So there was this kind of long process to find out. Like Alan called the neighbor. Neighbor didn't like Alan. And he went over and like, all right, looked around. It's fine, or something. And then he's like, calls back. He's, no, I really need you to check. Nothing. Finally, neighbors, he calls a neighbor, and they all go over like a posse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ends up being like
Is that
3 or
you?
4 of
Hey,
them.
is that you? Hey, is that you?
One of them's got a gun. Like,
Right. So the front door was unlocked the whole time.
yeah.
Any of them could have just walked in.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, they found found Alan's daughter, unharmed, but not happy.
Right.
Yeah, apparently she'd been screaming. She was hoarse because she'd been screaming and crying since, the afternoon. And this was like late in the evening.
So emotionally, probably not, good at all, but survived.
Right.
We see that Betty didn't fare as well.
No, unfortunately, she did not. She was discovered in the washroom by the posse.
Who thought that initially thought she'd been shot, but I don't know that they really took a good look at her. I don't blame them for that.
Yeah, I don't
Told
either.
Alan that
she'd been
that
shot.
she had been shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, much of her head was missing or separated.
Right.
It sounds terrible. It was a terrible scene. The neighbors were taken aback, understandably.
Yeah.
And the police were too. Went in there. But again, baby was safe. So we see that Alan actually called Candy during this, before they found her, found his wife. And she's like, I'm sure it's all right.
She even offered to go over and check.
Mm-hmm. Smart
like,
move,
okay.
right? Because it explains.
Like, oh yeah, I saw her this afternoon. I picked up the bathing suit from her. She was fine when I left. Do you want me to go over and check on her?
I wonder if Alan had said yes. What would have, would she have been like, all right, I'm going over there, and then like, put the phone up to her, like, look, I'm walking. You hear that? You hear I'm walking
Like,
over?
I'm going.
Yeah, like, but I wonder what would have happened if.
Well, it's a smart move as a killer to go back.
That's true.
Because you can explain. No, DNA wouldn't have been a problem yet in the 70s, but explain fingerprints, everything else, blood.
It's true.
She could have said she tripped and hurt her foot. I don't know. She also had another injury too. And her foot with toe was
head.
injured.
I think she had.
Yeah, she could have said I could, and fell and hit my head, and how terrible.
Yeah. That's true.
And she could have get back on the phone with Alan. So like, I don't know. She didn't answer the door. I don't know what's going on. You know, and then, do you want me to go inside?
Yeah.
Right.
Really putting it more on him.
Yeah, and really has it on. And then like I discovered the body because he told me to go in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and then she could have really thrown it much more on him.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
That would have been a smart move.
The police discovered that of course the body, but they also discovered the bloody axe right next to her. There was a handprint on the door of the refrigerator that was in that room, and a footprint in blood that did not match Betty's shoes. And then I think the most interesting thing of all, they found a whole lot of blood in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
And the shower was very wet.
Yeah, that was a little unusual based on what we'll hear next in the story. So Candy was arrested. She was the last person to see Betty alive. And here we've done a lot of these, right? What would you expect in a situation like this for Candy?
Oh no, I think the police are going to be like polygraph.
I would expect stories to change.
Oh yeah.
At that point.
Oh yeah, stories are going to change.
Yeah, or perhaps new information, or a variation on current information, or something along those lines. I would expect that, but that didn't happen. Everything Candy said remained the same at that time.
Oh yeah, because she'd rehearsed the same story over and over and over. She told every single person that she could get the same story.
Yeah,
in exactly the same words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in the show, I was like, I went to Target and then I didn't realize my watch had stopped, and so I just left the Target and went back and
back to church.
It's like went back to the church because those were the kids were. And then I got the bathing suit and I gave the kid and I gave her a mint after she did the diving thing. Whole thing like rehearsed, and she rehearsed it over and over again. And days later, she even said it again to some of the same people, exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So when she got to the police, she delivered the exact same story.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'd think just sticking with the story and let them do what they got to do would have been the best way to handle it from her perspective. She knew she was the killer. But we see a whole different approach. So she goes to trial in October 1980, and she testifies and admits that she killed Betty by striking her 41 times with an axe.
Yeah. But before that, she found out that they found a footprint in blood, and she took the flip flops that she had, the strap sandals she had, and cut them up and threw them away. She'd already thrown all of the clothes that she had been wearing into the wash and washed them repeatedly to make sure that there was no blood left on them.
Yeah, no question, she concealed her involvement. I mean, which becomes critical. Something for the jury to consider. So her story, which held up under cross-examination perfectly. So again, she really kept it tight with how she delivered things. I also think the cross-examination was weak, but her story.
Agreed.
What's that?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, did you do it? Are you a killer? No? All right, well.
I guess that's that.
I killed her, but it was self-defense. No further questions.
Like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Damn, I didn't think about that.
Self-defense.
How was I
checking the notes? Like, but why didn't I think of this option?
I didn't think they were going to go self-defense. Damn.
So here's her story.
But she had a great attorney. Great attorney.
He
was a civil law attorney. Just as his first capital case.
You're telling you there's a market for it? Well, maybe not.
Well, only one time.
Probably. And Candy, of all people, got it.
Yeah. Well, it's like going bowling just one time and throwing a strike, right? I mean,
It's true.
got an acquittal, but
it's the lottery.
yeah. So here's what she said, right? So she eventually admitted everything except the murder part. She said she was there, everything was fine, but then Betty confronted her about the affair and retrieved the axe. We see this kind of weird thing where like Betty's got the axe and she puts it down. Like, oh, look at the axe. I'm going to get you with the axe. Like this whole kind of awkward thing where they're talking. They talked a little more and they kind of resolved it. But then Candy put her hand on Betty's arm. So I'm so sorry, like about the affair.
Mm-hmm.
And Betty allegedly loses it completely. They're fighting to get control of the axe. Like Betty gets the axe coming at her. They're fighting for this axe.
An old-fashioned, like Western style, like I've got the Hollywood fight.
Right, they're
pushing back and forth.
Yeah. Somehow Betty does swing it and slices Candy's toe. I guess it bounced off the linoleum and cut her toe. Candy grabbed the axe again and managed to push Betty backward onto the floor, and then she smashed her head with the axe. After that, she struck her 40 more times with the axe.
The one thing that really was crucial in her story was that she was initially not going to strike her, and like before the whole incident, like Betty looked at her and said, "Shh."
Right. That's right.
That was a thing
That clicked.
that snapped her. Because apparently that was a trigger phrase.
Yeah, we'll get to
which goes into
get to that. There's a whole story, but
the whole story behind the trigger phrase. But that noise, that shushing noise, apparently was the trigger that just made Candy just go off.
Right. Took her back in time to age 4, and she had incredible strength and struck her and killed her in a rage. So, you think, all right, what would your verdict be if you're on this jury in 1980?
In 1980, I wouldn't have been on the jury, but if I was, transported back in time and placed on the jury with what I know now, being a mental health professional, I'd have been like guilty.
It would have been like, you would need maybe 2 or 3 minutes to figure it out.
Yeah.
Just to be totally safe.
And that's just you writing down the answer, putting it in the envelope.
Right.
And that's, yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, I'm going to write this down. Guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my prediction.
Mostly because the admitting it part.
Right. Like, yeah, I killed her part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually. But then you gotta remember this is Texas.
Yeah.
And as soon as in Texas you say self-defense.
Right.
Apparently we learned that with Robert Durst.
That's right. I was like, oh.
It's like, apparently if you kill someone in Texas, to get away with it, just let yourself get caught and say self-defense.
Mm-hmm. And at that moment, when the phrase self-defense is said, there's people outside the courthouse that just start shooting. Like
the prosecutors, God, no. God. Like that's the worst words every prosecutor in Texas can hear, self-defense.
I think when somebody says self-defense, that's when somebody gets a new weapon in Texas. Like
it's like an angel getting
like
wings.
Angel getting wings.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Like,
somebody says self-defense in Texas. Somebody just got a new weapon.
It's funny because I often tell people, like, people is like, I don't believe in guns. I go, well, they're not fairies. It's not Peter Pan. Like somebody says, I don't believe in fairies. A fairy drops dead. It's not the same thing. And apparently, the opposite is true. If somebody says self-defense, somebody just got their concealed carry permit.
I love the Texan in Simpsons. Who's always everything's always like.
That's what I picture when the self-defense. Like there's guys out there just self-defense. Yeah, right.
It's like there's old rich Texan and the Yosemite Sam standing right next to each other, just wielding their 6 guns.
Yeah, I think too what helped Candy was that Texans, they like self-defense as a defense, and they don't like defendants who attack the credibility of the police, because the police are a major institution in Texas.
Right.
But Betty didn't dispute anything. The police had to say.
Candy didn't dispute anything.
Yeah,
Betty definitely didn't dispute anything.
No, Betty didn't either. Unfortunately,
she didn't say anything during that entire trial.
Yeah, but Candy, she didn't impugn their credibility.
No.
Right. Mm-hmm. So
she was pretty good at manipulation, I guess, knowing what to say at the right time, kind of playing off of different things that people liked and so forth. I mean, just in general, I don't know what she was like during the trial, but she was generally good at that. She really knew what to do at the right time to get things to go her way.
Well, and to tell this story and not have any, like, under cross-examination, nothing, like, that just seems very difficult to believe. Like, what did he challenge? Because I would have challenged it all.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's amazing to me. I mean, the story is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, the mental health piece is significant in this case because it was Candy's idea, or attorney's idea, to introduce mental health as a defense.
Dr. Fasson.
Yeah.
Faison? I don't know how it's pronounced.
It's Fason.
Yeah. Faison.
He was a hypnotist, I guess, on the side, or
Introduced
hypnotherapy.
Yeah, introduced that at some point. Like, it wasn't if I remember correctly, it wasn't the main point of their therapy.
That was a
right?
huge fad in mental health stuff in the late 70s and 80s. Was the hypnotism, the hypnosis stuff. Like, people remember things under hypnosis that they wouldn't otherwise remember.
repressed memories.
Repressed
Reaching into
memories.
your
Like,
deep unconscious something.
no.
Yeah, this was all, this all goes back to Freud, right? The unconscious mind, and all the defense mechanisms are a version of repression. And that was the big one. Repression was the main one, and all the defense mechanisms were a subtype. And you could push, in theory, these memories, or your mind would push these memories down deep because they're too difficult to process.
Right.
Where your ego is at that time developmentally. And there's only 5 stages in Freud's framework. So it was really easy. And I think after 12, it's all the same. Right? Or no, was it 12 or whatever age? I forget. But most of them happen early.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your life, you're one thing. So the idea, is that somewhere down deep, there's these memories that the hypnosis can unlock.
Yeah. More modern interpretations of things like trauma indicate that the reason it becomes so problematic is not because it gets repressed, it's because it keeps trying to come back.
Right.
Like it's like I always use like an elephant standing behind you, like trying to, hey, pay attention to me, like process me, think about me.
So really, you could argue that Freud's repression has been converted into dissociation. That's the new word that people. Now, it's not so much from memories, but just the general idea that you can separate from reality under stress,
Right.
and that something can get locked behind that. Another personality. I guess really, essentially memories. I mean, in dissociation, you could argue dissociative amnesia and the memories were formed. They formed, but they're like trapped behind like a paywall, I guess.
Right. It's pay to win. You have to pay a certain amount of money to come in and get access to these memories. But as we've talked a little bit about dissociation before in other videos, like dissociation defined in the DSM as memory issues. If in this particular case, Dr. Faison said that she'd had a dissociative reaction,
Right.
and had gone rageful, but the dissociation only where it's associated with memory is from an event that supposedly happened when she was 4. And like when people do dissociate, they tend to either have flashbacks, like where they're back in that moment, like the guy at they see in movies and stuff like the Vietnam War vet who's at the grocery store using a baguette as a machine gun and throwing pineapples like grenades, like
Right. Because a car backfired.
because a car backfired somewhere, and like that. The as funny or as funny as that is in a movie, like that actually can happen. Like people like fully find themselves back in that moment. That's a dissociative reaction. It's based on trauma. If she was back at 4 years old, she wouldn't be swinging an axe. If that was the dissociation she had, right. And if the dissociation was in the opposite direction, where she would have blacked out and not remembered what happened, she wouldn't know what she did.
Yeah, it's tricky. Dissociation is tricky because people hear the skepticism and they say, no, I dissociated once or twice or whatever. But there's a difference between having a deep personalization, derealization experience, and then having all this other stuff that the DSM more or less magically claims can happen. The amnesia, the multiple personalities. In my opinion, there's really no credible evidence that supports those theories. But yes, you can dissociate, right? And, drugs can cause that as well. You can have moments that don't seem, LSD or whatever, that don't seem real. But the whole Freudian construct laid on top of that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know the DSM, they divide into work groups. I think this actually hurts them. They don't really have other opinions coming in. But I'm assuming the work group that I just got the DSM-5 TR.
TR.
Yeah, it's like a teal. It's like a metallic teal.
Yeah, I got to get one of those.
Yeah, very, very bright DSM.
Nice.
But, I haven't looked at it too much, but I'm going to presume that
I mean, I liked the purple.
the idea is still in there. Yeah, I thought the purple was the best one. Yeah, best color they had. But the teal is very, gets your attention. So it's like
a late 1970s Volkswagen
Christmas tree, I was thinking.
small truck. Maybe?
The aluminum Christmas tree.
That's what I was thinking. It's just recycle this tree into a book. But yeah, I'm going to presume the ID is still in there.
Yeah.
And
as far as I know.
at this point, I really feel like it is an embarrassment to all professionals that we keep seeing these
that
theories
is really-
promoted. Isn't it? It's
I just
something.
looked at the cover. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really.
And
I prefer the purple.
And you think, I think a lot of people just say all right, well, just let it go. Yeah, it's anti-science, whatever. It's not supported by evidence, but let it go because it doesn't hurt anybody.
But it can.
You look at this
Yeah.
case.
But it can.
I mean, Betty never got justice.
Right.
No, she didn't.
She was literally struck with an axe 41 times, and her killer walked.
Yeah.
That's the danger of this the pseudoscience.
And it's been used a lot in shows and movies and everything as well. So it's really gained popularity as something that's real, something that could actually happen. And I've heard from clients that, that they believe this and they kind of start to attribute these kind of behaviors, oh, maybe this person has DID and this explains whatever this just happened. And they're really going off in the left field in some of these cases because they're starting to believe things that are not actually real, that they really don't even understand to begin with. Mainly because there's no real evidence for it, but they don't really understand it because they see it in shows, therefore they think it's real, and creates a whole problem area with that.
Yeah. I think, when people criticize mental health counseling and the related professions, I'll defend what we do treatment-wise, but I can't defend some of these diagnostic categories. They're fantasy.
Yeah.
They're fantasy. I don't know how else to put it. There's other explanations for what appears to be DID and dissociative amnesia.
I mean, they work really well in Moon Knight, but that's a Marvel Disney, show.
If you took away amnesia, soap operas, the writers would be like, what do we got? What are we going to do now? All right, we're done.
Oh, no, soap operas, that's their bread and butter. You can't take away.
Amnesia.
Can't take away amnesia.
It's like,
What? No.
What are we going to talk about?
It's like, wait, no.
Another
that's,
affair that
that's-
everyone remembers everything about it?
that's how we wrap everything up, right? It's like we can't always go to the "it was all a dream" thing.
I was going to say, if you took away dreams, then the whole
yeah.
industry is flat.
It's like that whole season was a dream. Who shot JR?
What an insult to the. I remember when that happened with JR with Dallas. I didn't watch it, but it was in the news. What an insult to that audience. To everybody who watched that show. I always like the theme of Dallas, the music. Yeah.
I liked when they brought it back in the mid 2000s. They did a resurgence of it for 3 or 4 seasons. It was actually really good. Almost the entire original cast came back, and it was really good. They kind of picked up right where they left off.
I don't know. I don't remember them doing that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was great.
So let's talk about the shush.
Shh.
This
And
is
because you just did that, now there's people.
There's no axes in here, right?
There might be, but now there's people out there watching who are like, I gotta find my axe now.
we can get one of those novelty overs.
The only axe we have in here right now is in a skull over there. Thankfully.
It's made out of resin, thankfully.
Yeah, so this is interesting because Candy's attorney was not happy with. There's three mental health professionals. He was not happy with the clinician who talked about the shush thing. He thought it was a bridge too far, and just wanted it to be done. Turns out it probably helped her a lot. So this clinician, another clinician said dissociative reaction. The second clinician, or I don't know what order it was, but the next one said when she was 6, she developed it and it continued for her whole life, which is interesting because her story is what the trauma or whatever was at 4, 2 years before the clinician even said she had it. But she cut herself on a candy jar or something, glass jar, and her mother took her to the emergency room, and I guess she was crying. Her mother said, "Shh, what will they think of you in the waiting room?" That was the trauma, not the getting cut by the jar.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's a good thing that in the intervening years between that event and the thing with Betty, that Candy apparently avoided going into libraries. Because that is the favorite thing of librarians, especially in the 70s and 80s. Shh.
Yeah, and they would do it. They would do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nowadays everybody's sensitive, but back then, you make some noise in the library, right in your face. Yeah.
Right. Shh. You know, and it's a good thing. And if she did go into a library, it's a good thing she didn't have an axe with her, because there'd been a bunch of dead librarians, apparently.
Would have been a bloodbath, yeah.
And to me, that's what the thing that doesn't make sense is like the how she got to rage-filled dissociative reaction from that particular type of event. That the dissociative reaction that might have had would have been more of a cowering reaction, I would think. Mm-hmm. Like more of a like, oh, what are people going to think of me? And withdrawing, rather than, oh, I'm going to kill somebody, because if it's taken her back to that moment. You know, at 4, what did she want to kill her mom when her mom said, "Shh, what are people going to think of you?" Like she suddenly became like a little tiny Hulk, going like, "I'll kill you."
Also 4.
Yeah,
I mean, you can certainly remember something from 4, but would you remember that?
So if it was, the first time in a hospital, first time getting a big injury, going to the ER, yes, I can say people will remember that. But the shh is not a big traumatic thing.
Is that the part she would remember?
Is that the part that would be the most pertinent thing, or would it be the the pain from the cut on her hand, or the blood everywhere, or seeing the doctor sewing her hand up, like those are things that I think would take more precedence than shh. What are people going to think of you in the waiting room?
Or even just like you said, being kind of embarrassed maybe, or something like that, and that kind of like, oh, I'm embarrassed now, or I feel a negative something right now, but yeah, murdering someone.
Yeah, it's not where I think that would have taken her.
Yeah, very shaky defense. I can see why the civil law attorney was not happy with it. I mean, it wasn't a criminal defense, but he still knew, a story that's made up and one that's not.
Geez, this is gonna be bad.
Yeah,
acquitted.
Exactly.
It's like you had the Durst reaction to being acquitted.
Well, you see when people are found guilty, they'll flip out and cry and fall over. That's probably what he was doing. And what? But yeah, I mean, the jury considered all this, and I guess the shush argument and other nonsense convinced them that she was not guilty, and she walked.
The thing that I think that really should have been considered, is what I would have insisted on considering, was the things that she did after the fact, the concealing. The fact that, and here we didn't touch on this yet, but the fact that she took a shower in the Gores' home before she left.
Well, maybe, right. The shower had been run,
right,
and there was blood in the sink, so they couldn't prove she took it, but I think she did.
Yeah.
Either way, she'd probably wash herself off in some way.
I'm pretty sure she did.
Yeah.
And she's that's what a lot of the allegations are. She took a shower before she left. She definitely got rid of the sandals she was wearing after she heard that they were there. She washed her clothes over and over and over again. She came up with this story that she rehearsed to every single person. Those are that's consciousness of guilt. Mm-hmm. She knew what she did.
Well, she admitted it didn't look good.
Yeah.
That's the understatement.
Really? It doesn't look good?
Which part? What are you talking about? Oh, right, the body.
Oh, right. the dead person.
The part where I
over
look very
there.
guilty. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. My fingerprints are on the fridge. My footprints in the blood. I smacked her 41 times with an axe. Yeah, I know that looks really bad. But hear me out.
It's exactly.
Self-defense. I took a shower afterwards. I concealed everything, but that's my problem. That's what I think the jury really should have considered a lot more of is that consciousness of guilt after the fact, in the immediate after the fact. Like if this was a dissociative reaction, it doesn't just stop right after the murder and go, oh crap, what did I do? I'm going to go take a shower and think about this. Well, okay, now I'm going to go. It was an immediate consciousness of guilt. It was like, oh crap, I knew what I did. And I don't want anybody to see me walking out of here completely bloody. So I'm going to go take a shower or at least wash myself off in the thing. And the thing that brought to mind for me when I saw this was actually the Jeff Pelly case. Mm-hmm. And especially when I saw the first thing I thought of when I saw the Hulu show and I went into the bathroom and there's the bath mat there, just covered in blood. A little bit in the shower. A shower had been run. There's blood in the sink all over the place. And I'm like, okay, if she took 10 minutes to shower and then left, this is the amount of blood that would have been here. Okay, in the Jeff Pelly case, there was no blood anywhere in that bathroom at all. But the police said that he took a shower after he killed his family so that he would be clean for going to the prom. And I'm like, yeah, right. Maybe you should check the crime scene at the Gore house and see what it really looks like when someone takes a shower after they murder someone. And that was just one person.
Yeah. Jeff Pelly, in theory, killed several with a 20 gauge shotgun, if I remember right. But I don't think he did. But he was convicted of it
at close range too.
Right.
So. But that was my first thoughts when I saw that, and I was like, okay. But to be a juror on this, that should have been considered, but the jurors didn't. It doesn't matter what she did after the fact; it matters what happened during that moment.
The whole time that I was watching the the Candy show or mini series, I knew that she had been acquitted. And so the whole time I was thinking all right, what might someone say in this situation that's going to get them acquitted? And I kept thinking of we've heard this argument before too, somebody who is probably actually guilty, but the kind of argument of, I didn't tell anyone because it looked so bad. And I didn't tell anyone because I knew what they might say. They might automatically assume that I did it and I murdered her and whatever. And so I'm thinking about that, and she's kind of in the perfect position for that. A stay-at-home mom in a nice area, threw the baby shower, helped with her kids, had her daughter over there at the time with her, and it's like, well, I have this perfect life, and I didn't want anyone to think that I did the wrong thing, so I didn't tell anyone. I don't know that she actually said any of that, but I wonder if this is the impression that the jury got. I didn't want to tell anyone about this because I'm actually not guilty. It looks bad, but I'm actually not guilty. And I wonder if just her position in life worked to that advantage. A stay-at-home mom, a husband with a good job, in a good community, really involved in a lot of different things. How could she have done it? Oh, and now she's saying that it was self-defense. All right, well, that makes sense. With maybe that was the line of thinking. That's me trying to put pieces together where it's how could this have happened? Trying to put myself in their shoes, maybe the shoes of the jurors or people in that community at the time. Even her husband, for that matter, who was still on her side testifying, during that. And
even though he found out about the affair.
Right.
He found out the affair because one of the notes that Alan wrote to Candy that said, "Love Alan," and talked about their affair, and he found it. And his reaction, and he talked about this in court, his reaction was to go out and buy Candy flowers and chocolates.
Because he thought it was his fault, or partially his fault. There's nothing really to figure out there. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who's hearing this, trying to perceive whatever they might have been perceiving at the time. And it's tough to imagine how that happened, how she got acquitted.
And she left a baby there,
Oh yeah,
which I can't believe the jury was willing to,
right,
even if they bought into the nonsense with the dissociation.
right,
You're okay with her leaving the baby there? She could have died.
right.
It's just, even if she was scared for herself, there's the baby. You're going to sacrifice a life? Yeah, they let it go.
In the Hulu special, when they picked the baby up, the baby had blood on her, almost like Candy had taken her out, or after the murder or something. I don't remember if they said that in the Texas Monthly. Yeah, so I don't know.
That.
I don't know if that's true or accurate in any way, but if it is, that makes it so much worse. Intentionally put the baby back down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the mindset of that. I mean, Candy didn't just have the one affair either. Like it wasn't just Alan. There was at least one other.
Right, in
After-
November and December.
Yeah, after Alan had ended their
And that's
their
the one
affair.
that Pat found out during the trial, right?
Yeah, it was during the trial when she was asked on cross, like, "Have you had an affair with anybody else?" She's like, "Yes."
Another one.
And Pat's like, "Oh my goodness gracious!" Like, and yeah, I think that was kind of the final nail in the coffin of that particular relationship. But they stayed married for a few years after.
I think
4 years
years.
after after the trial was over. But the mindset of a person who goes through that experience, like killing someone in that fashion, 41 axe strokes, like the only dissociative reaction I can think of that would explain that is like flashing back and thinking she's Lizzie Borden or something. Like the ghost of Lizzie Borden possessed me, and I went at it, or just sheer rage.
That could have been believable at that point, like that a ghost had caused her to get in her body.
If it had
caused her
been
to do that.
Massachusetts, maybe, I think.
Yeah, axes are a pretty unusual weapon for homicide. Now, the only thing that bothers me about on the side of Candy, I guess, is that she didn't know the axe was there. So, did she go there hoping to find something that she could commit murder with, or was it a heat of the moment?
I do think it was a heat of the moment thing. I really do. I don't think that Betty introduced the axe, though. I think the axe was in that storage room hanging on the wall. It was in plain sight.
I thought that, didn't Alan testify it was in the garage? Or was that room called a garage? Or
It was in the garage in the show, and I do remember him
but
talking
it
about
was
the
it
garage.
was hanging in plain sight.
So maybe she did see it.
So she could have seen it. I really think there was a matter of conversation, and like she finally boiled over, like that Candy boiled over with something and let it slip incidentally that she'd had this affair with Alan, and then it became an argument.
How'd they get from bathing suit? Like, I guess I'm struggling. Like, what she went over with the intent to do? Get a bathing suit should have been pretty. Again, we said most people survive, right?
Right.
So
Most people survive. I don't know. It could have anything could have anything could have triggered the conversation. Could have been talking about marriage encounters or something like that. Like, hey, you want to come in? Like, here, have something to drink while I get the bathing suit, and you're sitting there. And then apparently there was a one of those things that like somebody in the marriage encounters group thinks of another couple and just calls them up for one ring and hangs up, and that's why somebody's thinking about you. If that kind of thing happened right then, they would have sparked, well, who was that? And they only ring once, and then Betty gets into this whole like, oh man, we're so happy because of marriage encounters, and that was a marriage encounter thing, and blah blah blah, and she's starts gushing about things, or even she's talking about like Alan's like, I'm really worried about Alan's out of town, and I'm so upset because I love him so much, I want him to be near, and that kind of thing. If Candy actually had some feelings for Alan, that kind of thing would have boiled her blood, and if the conversation had been going around into the washroom. Anywhere near that axe, and something was said, Candy would have grabbed it up and.
well, clearly there was some impulse control problems. So, who knows what happened? It's too bad that Candy won't. I mean, I don't think she's telling the truth.
All supposition, but
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure she's not telling the truth. I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure the jury made a mistake, but I don't know that either for sure. I mean, technically, Betty could have come at her with the axe. I mean, and Candy got the upper hand, then decided, well, she's not going to kill her. And just a weird, it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
It's possible, but given the way Betty was described at that point, with the very somatic symptomology and the hypochondriasis and the worry, that would tend to me to point to a more timid person at that point, one more likely to withdraw from confrontation than to be confrontational. If you look at the type A personalities, like they're much more aggressive and much more apt to act against someone who's backing away.
Well, look at Betty's relational style with Alan. I mean, she wasn't aggressive. Yeah. Certainly no axes involved. I mean, to go from that and being afraid of being like physically injured or hurt or having symptoms to attacking somebody or threatening them. Mm-hmm. An axe is just an unusual weapon.
Yeah.
To see anyone wielding, but I can't think of any other than Lizzie Borden, any other case where a woman killed someone with an axe. I'm sure there have been some, but I can't think of any.
I mean, and like Lizzie Borden, like there was an acquittal here. But
yeah,
I don't know. The thing that gets me though is that wound on her toe. Like apparently, the people in Wiley and Dallas weren't used to chopping wood for fires.
Right.
Because none of them have ever had a close call with their foot and an axe while chopping wood. I have. I had a pair of boots that had a cut in it from an axe because I missed and it deflected down and went right through the top of the boot. It didn't touch any of my toes, thankfully. It went right between the big toe and the next toe.
You're lucky.
It was close, but it almost there. And that seems like that's the kind of wound she had. Like it seems to me like she was swinging and missed and it went down. Yeah. Not that somebody else swung at her.
She caused it. I'm pretty sure she caused it.
She caused her own injuries there. And all it would take would be one bad swing to clock herself upside the head to cause the scalp wound. Yeah. And all that can be done in 41 swipes of that axe. Yeah.
Well, Betty was probably down after the first hit. And this was just overkill. Right. I mean, some of the worst overkill I think we've ever covered.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it is possible that the axe had been moved into the other room for a reason. I mean, Betty had been reading articles about The Shining, which had just come out at that point, in which Jack Nicholson plays a guy who tries to axe murder his family. If she was really having a lot of anxiety about a lot of different things, was reading that, she might have moved the axe from the garage to somewhere else to try and hide it, or with the intention of hiding it or getting rid of it. And
just in case Jack Nicholson showed up.
Oh, just in case Alan went crazy on her at one point, just because if she's having all sorts of anxiety and health anxiety and symptomology, that kind of thought process makes sense. Like Alan might, if this happened with Alan, I don't know if he would, but if it did, like I want to make sure the axe is gone. And so she moves it somewhere else where Candy actually just happens to see it, and they're in this high emotional state going back and forth, and Candy just impulse grab, whack. And then it's just rage after that.
Maybe even in the back of the head. Yeah. There's no way they could figure it out, like based on the injuries.
No. Right. But I know from swinging axes at firewood and doing a good job of with nice, good dry wood that splits easy. After 15 or 20,
it's pretty sore.
Yeah. 15 or 20 really slow hits. You're kind of sore. If you were swinging real hard, real fast, you'd get exhausted by the time you got to 15 or 20. The fact that she went to 41 speaks of a lot of just intent to destroy. A lot of rage.
Yeah. How much she was feeling at that point.
Right. And the Hulu special thought I had a great one where Pat went out in the backyard of their house and takes an axe after he heard about all this, and he like swings it into the wood and one. And he yanks it out. yanks out. Just he's trying to see like what it would be like to hit something 41 times with an axe.
Right.
And I'm like, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, your arms would be sore, especially if you're not
Shoulders
used to
would
that.
be, I mean,
Brutal. It'd be
on
brutal.
fire. Yeah.
Brutal.
I mean, she wasn't like a weightlifter.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people who kind of do those kinds of activities for a living who would be like 41 times in how long? Like that is not an easy thing to do.
Especially with a big
matter
axe
what.
like that.
Oh yeah.
Not just a little handheld, a big one.
No.
We've seen some. Have we covered hatchet attacks? I thought we had a few that had hatchet attacks.
I don't remember any
think so.
hatchet attacks.
I remember a chainsaw.
The chainsaw. There have been some cases. I think hatchets are more common to see in attacks. They're a lot easier to handle.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't like a knife, you go to hatchet. But a 3-foot handle, it's a massive axe.
Yeah.
It's a big axe.
I don't know if it. I don't remember it saying it in the Texas Monthly article, but Hulu special, they the police, I believe it was, were saying things like, we're looking for this big maniac, somebody that can handle this big axe repeatedly. Not we're not looking for you. Talking about Candy.
Initially, they
Yeah,
thought it
'cause
was
there's no way.
some drifter or
Some drifter, right? Yeah, there's
something
no
like
way
that,
you
right.
could have done it. I mean, it's a huge axe, and you're not that big. Just really downplaying the possibility of a woman doing that. And of course, you the audience know, like, but she did. Like, this isn't, you're not seeing the big picture here.
But based on the handprint and the shoe print, they knew they were looking for someone small in stature.
Right.
All right. So that's where the case ended. Surprise acquittal. I think one of the most surprising that we've covered. Just shocking. Anyone could walk out of that. Not even like second degree manslaughter. Nothing.
No, just acquittal. Like, not guilty by reason of self-defense.
Yep.
And they got the whole jury to agree to that.
Yeah, I think they considered. Was it? I think this is this case. Is this the jury that considered manslaughter, and they were split at first, and then was that covered in the?
I don't
remember
think so. I
reading
know
it.
it was only a couple of hours that they were out. Like they made that acquittal decision lickety split. Like they were real quick.
It might have been in there. I might have missed
Might
it.
have been another case I was thinking of, but yeah, they didn't come back with anything. It was not guilty. So
Yeah, I think they were all like not guilty going into the room. They were just like, "Hey, let's get a free lunch out of this." Like we've seen guilty verdicts in that amount of time. It's like, hey, we all know he's guilty, right? Yeah. Okay, what are we getting for lunch?
Ronnie O'Neill said, "The evidence will show."
Oh, I shouldn't have represented yourself. And nobody was going to get him acquitted of that, but he definitely shouldn't have represented himself.
I think it was just his last like hurrah. Like have some fun for life in prison. He's never getting out. All right. So, final thoughts on this case?
The part that we really didn't talk about very much, and I think we're rather ashamed to say this. Actually, we did talk about it a bit, but rather ashamed to talk about this. That Candy Wheeler, formerly Candy Montgomery, is currently a licensed professional counselor in Georgia, and it sucks to say that. A room full of counselors sitting here, like, hey, yeah, she's one of us, and yeah.
There's always black sheep in the family.
Yeah, right. So I tried looking up, where she practices, or, is it her own thing, or I just want anything. And the thing that kept popping up was associated with her license is a place called Creative Play something. I forget the last word there. But like a play therapy type place is my impression. But you go on the website for that place, and there's no mention of her. So I don't really know. I mean, maybe she...
The age would put her in her 70s. I'm wondering if retirement.
Perhaps.
A lot of people keep their licenses even
That's
when...
fair. That's fair.
You have to do like 40 Cs, a couple of years.
Right. No, that's fair. Yeah, but I'm curious what she's up to. That's about it, But
Or how her career went.
yeah,
Prior, if she retired. I mean, just seems like quite a story to tell. And you think, well, before the internet, people probably didn't really hear about this as much. It was a national news story for a while, but then
right. But maybe maybe working with kids was kind of the ideal there, because kids certainly aren't going to look into it or care necessarily or whatever. The parents might, of course, but at that point where the kid needs help, it's like, maybe they're not looking too far into the person who's providing that service. So I don't know. Maybe she was a determined person for sure, creative in many different ways, many different bad ways, but many different ways. So maybe that was her way of still trying to come out on top, or feeling like she did, and like, I can still do something, even though these people try to make me look bad or whatever. I can still do something. I can, I'll work with kids, and they don't care what I did in my past.
I gotta think, though, if you're working at a place that works with kids, you're gonna hear shh quite a lot.
Right.
Like, that might be a dangerous place for her to work. Just saying.
As long as she doesn't go back to court to be like, hey, you heard this about a dozen times today, and no axes came out.
As long as she doesn't bring her axe collection from home. I was going to show off my axes today. Shh. No.
Axe throwing became big, and she's like, oh, no, not that. She had to retire at that point. Yeah. If axe throwing's big, she might find an axe anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Don't want to go to one of those places.
I'm thinking maybe she gravitated toward the field that saved her.
I'd like to think that. I would like to think that. It's kind of my final thoughts on it. Like, I'd like to think that she found respect for the people who kind of saved her from going to prison. I also think that, by that point, no matter what happened at that point, she'd convinced herself that it was self-defense. That her story held up under cross-examination because she believed it, because that was her memory of it. If any kind of dissociation happened, it was replacement. It was manufacturing of certain memories or alteration of memories of things that actually happened. So I don't think that Betty was the initial aggressor, based on just the way assessment of her character, who she was, what she was like beforehand. I don't think she would have been the aggressor in that situation. It's possible, but either way, Betty thought that was the way it was. And I think that, she might have said, these people saved me, so I really want to study what they study. I want to go that way. But the other thing that really makes me think that she went in that direction is just the gossipy housewife thing. Where else are you going to be able to hear people's dirty little secrets?
That's a good point.
And if you're a therapist, you don't have to try and find them. People bring them to you. They'll talk
happily,
about
too.
Everything happily, and you make money while doing it. So, hey, this is great. And which I think that she had a variety of motives in entering the field. Some of them altruistic, some of them not so much. And it's unfortunate. The whole situation is unfortunate, no matter what happened. Yep. And I really do hope that through her career as a mental health professional, she was actually able to, aid people in changing their lives and growing. The negative reviews don't seem to hold that up, but
Affair planning might have been her specialty.
Hey,
that's true.
She could have become an event and affair planner.
Events real small in the business card.
We do wedding. Well, no, you hide it by saying, it's affairs, all kinds of affairs, weddings, birthday parties, every kind of affair. Even the marriage ones.
I mean, every
kind of affair. It's like, so you want the special, right?
Weddings, after the wedding affairs.
You can just see some client in there with her, like, think about having this affair, and I really want to do it. What's the worst that could happen? It's not like anybody's going to come
like an axe
after me.
murder or something could happen, right? Right?
Yeah, right. That never happens.
Right?
Shh. Oh no!
Why aren't you saying anything?
That's right.
Somebody shushes somebody else in the other room. She's like, "Oh no, this is the worst possible moment. You just said this wasn't going to happen. Now you're going to get murdered."
It would be even worse, like if she was standing like at a gas station or something, and somebody's filling up their air tire, and the thing comes loose and just
it just won't stop.
And then she just starts pouring gas everywhere. Well, burn this place down. Because apparently rage happens. Like this is her Hulk trigger.
That's just how it.
Well, it's interesting because you see the hypnosis plot device has been used in a lot of shows.
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago, there was an episode of The A-Team where the word eclipse, like, remember H.M. Murdoch, Howling Mad Murdoch, activated, and somebody was there in a firefight, which they always shot at the ground, and somebody said clips, even though they were actually magazines, but they said, I need a clip or something, and that was close enough, and he lost it or spaced out or whatever. But that's a big hypnosis thing. So like that was very consistent with this practitioner's, the one that treated her, conceptualization of how people react and respond and behave.
I've talked about unsolved mysteries a lot, in many different episodes, but that's a consistent thing because, it talks mostly about cases from the late 70s, early 80s and early 90s. And there's a lot of them where it's like, under hypnosis, remembered. Every time I hear that, I laugh.
Well, they always remember that they are not guilty.
Right? Yeah. Right?
I mean, I would be more open to believing it if somebody's like, I did the hypnosis. It turns out I did it. Bad news. Bad news from the mental health counselor.
I mean, it'd be more realistic.
Yeah.
But the hypnotherapist who goes, I find out whether you're really guilty or not. That guy's probably not going to get a lot of because nobody's going to go to him going like, can you tell me if I killed somebody? Or like, I don't remember. I think I might have. It's like, did you wake up covered in blood? Yeah, I did. Did you take a shower in the person's home? Yeah, probably did.
Do you know someone who has the letter A in their name? I do.
Alice. Yeah, that person was named Alice. Right. Cold reading. Gotta love cold reading.
All right, so we'll wrap up for today with Candy Montgomery. Certainly one of the more interesting cases that we've covered, and we've covered a lot of incredible cases with twisted insurance. I think the acquittal in this case with the mental health excuse is something special that came together for a wild case.
And two different TV series, and not just special TV series based on this. One on Hulu. I think it's 5 episodes long, each an hour long. It's really good. Jessica Biel does an amazing job as Candy Montgomery.
Justin Timberlake's in it too.
Yeah.
Her husband, Justin Timberlake, is in it too. The detective that investigates it. Yeah.
And it's not been released yet. It probably won't be until September or so. Is Love and Death, the Candy Montgomery story. That one stars Elizabeth Olsen.
Is that HBO?
Yes, that's on HBO. Probably be around September because they just finished filming it in March. So post-production takes a while on those kinds of big budget shows. Our post-production doesn't take that nearly as long. It's kind of like, are we done? We done? Yeah, we got a couple of things to trim. All right, get it up. Like they take a long time to go through everything.
It's funny they both picked a 42, well, in less than a month, 42-year-old case to cover. I mean, I like the old cases, but just like both big production companies go for the same. Like that's pretty old for material that.
Well, they both saw fireworks in it.
All right, so we'll wrap up this episode of the Murder Part. Any ideas for?
I did have a new tchotchke that I brought along, but it's not here on the table because when I was coming into towards the studio, I made a turn and the thing fell over in the seat and the head popped right off.
Oh no!
So now I have to take it home and fix it, but it should be here for our next filming. But for this case, I mean, I would go with an axe, but we already have a skull with an axe in it over there. See, I could do fireworks, fireworks or something.
That's a good one.
Because that was a big part of this. Or let's see,
a telephone.
I was thinking that old phone, cookies,
volleyball.
The volleyball net, volleyball and volleyball net. Yeah. So there we go.
Or even like a Tupperware container, because like she would always bring lunch to the affair or something, or a motel sign. I don't know. Yeah. Or maybe the Volkswagen. I don't know if he actually had one though. That's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. No, the volleyball is a great one, and the fireworks. Yeah.
Okay.
Do a little fireworks display or the volleyball.
Excellent.
Volleyball and net.
Yeah. So put your vote for the item in the comments, and the most votes will get produced, and you'll bring in the wounded one, repaired one for next time.
Yep.
Very good. So that was our episode of the murder part on Kenny Montgomery. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.